in the last couple of weeks with YouTube.
No worries.
Good, you're good to go.
Okay, super. Thank you. Okay, well, welcome everyone. So I am standing in for Kurt, who is traveling. And I'm a bit rusty because my last meeting was, I guess, August, or maybe it was July, because we took August off and I was traveling for September. So forgive me if I get some of the parliamentary rules a bit out of whack, but my recollection is we do a call to order and then roll call, which he typically relies on the Brady Bunch pictures to do, which I'm good with as well. And then we have an agenda. Does that need to be voted on or no? The agenda?
He does, but not everybody does.
Okay, well, we're going to kind of skip voting that in, but I will take a motion to formally and capture the minutes which Tara sent out and Kurt included with the email that had the agenda. So can I get a motion for that, please?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. I got a first and a second.
Seconded.
There. Okay. So we'll have minutes recorded in. And then I know Kurt often pauses for public participation, but everybody I see on here appears to be a board member or an alderperson or a member of the transportation department. So barring any other, unless I'm missing someone, I will move past the public participation section. And that brings us to the transportation department update. Either Kwaku or Marcus, if one of you want to give that would be great.
Hi, this is Kwaku here. I'm not sure if Marcus is online. I don't have anything new to report. I don't know if Marcus has something with regard to the I think the golf cart projects in the Eastport, which he's been working on for some time. Otherwise, personally, I don't have anything else to report on at this time.
Okay.
And let me ask also that if anybody has a question, I'm here to answer those questions to the best of my ability.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Certainly, if Marcus logs on, we're happy to come back to him if he has more information beyond that. But I imagine we've got a pretty full plate with the old business items. So Kurt, certainly don't want to ever steal your thunder. I know you were questionable on connectivity. If you want to step in, I will not hurt my feelings.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Okay, I'm sitting in a car in Florida. It's very weird. No, go ahead. You be the MC. I think I'd better just sit on the sidelines.
Okay, well, feel free to interject. All right, so we're now on board membership, which I think is really just an informational point that we currently have 3 vacancies. We're looking for a representative from Ward 5, another representative for Ward 7, and then the at-large position is open as well. So if there's any referrals, please let me know.
Tom, if I remember right, I just read that after a certain period of time, which we have passed, then the representatives from those wards can actually be from other wards. So in other words, if someone from Ward 1 wants to be on this board and there's not a position of Ward 1 or an at-large position, they could take up one of these other positions. Am I right? I read that.
That's correct. That's correct. We can regard all vacant positions at this point as at large.
Yeah, which expands your field.
Okay. Do you have somebody that you know of who fits that bill?
No, but I wanted to be sure that it was that we knew that, so that if anybody else did, especially some of our new members, if anyone else did, that those people could potentially be on our board.
Okay, so we're taking all comers, it sounds like.
Yes.
All right. Sounds good. Okay, well, moving on past that bullet point item into old business, there's a bullet point for bicycles regarding House Bill 519. Do you have, is there a person tied to that or a resource who wants to speak on that topic?
I guess maybe I am, and there is no change from the last meeting.
Okay.
And I think after reading the minutes a few minutes ago, I realized I had an action item on there related to that. I was going to contact the city to see about any analysis they have done or plan to do for areas we may not want to allow bicycles. But I don't know if they're moving forward since I think they passed in the city, right, Kurt? And we were thinking since it passed in the cities, Alderman Savage's position was he didn't need to pursue anything at the state level. I think
That was his position, yes.
Yeah. So
not one I agree with, but that was his position.
Right. I noticed I had an action item on there, so I will. I'm doing a bit more. We're kind of reviving a number of our bicycle discussions with the city, at least at the Naval Academy. So I'll bring that up as for topic before our next meeting. Get back to you.
Okay, great.
Okay. So moving on, there's a second bullet point with Hugh tied to it regarding bicycle infrastructure. And I saw Hugh on here earlier. Yeah.
Hey,
Hi.
so I have like two projects that I wanted to talk to you guys tonight, and I had like a PowerPoint presentation, two quick ones. Can I share my screen and sort of dive into it?
Yeah, do it.
Give me 1 second. Sorry, give me just a second. Okay, so there's two things I wanted to talk about. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
So there is a proposed protected bike path on the United States Naval Academy Bridge that I want to talk about and sort of see if we could discuss it tonight. To give you a quick background on it, the state is working on a project to add a shared use path on the west side of the Naval Academy Bridge, and the county is working on a project to add a shared use path on the east side of the Naval Academy Bridge. And that would connect the BNA, that would connect to the BNA trail. The city and its partners are working with the state currently on design on the west side project, and the city would like the state to include in this project adding a protected bike path across the bridge, so there's a continuous safe path between downtown and the BNA trail. If the bridge part is not included in the project, there would be a huge gap in Annapolis's bike network and also in the region's bike network, severely limiting its value. I assume some of you guys have already seen this before. It's Bike AAA's trail network map that they have put together, showing the existing trails, also what's in progress and what's planned. And the section I'm talking about is that little tiny point at the very bottom between the South Shore Trail and the BNA Trail. And you can see that once this is fully built out, if that piece is missing, it's really breaking up the entire trail network that's being planned. So what MDOT and SHA have put together as these 5 alternatives, and the city and the Naval Academy, I think, work together to put together this one. This might just be the city's preferred, but I think it's a combination of what the Naval Academy and the city wanted, which includes a 2-way separated bike lane. And you can see on the right-hand side what they are thinking of what it might look like. So why this is so important to me and why I wanted to talk about it tonight is the speed limit on that bridge is 40 miles an hour. which means a lot of people are really going closer to 50 miles an hour. At this speed, if a car hits someone on a bike, there's around a 90% chance it will be a fatality. You can see in the graphic that I include on the right from the National Traffic Safety Board that at 40 miles an hour, it's about an 85% fatality rate. So the current setup on the bridge is bikes ride on the shoulder. This is extremely dangerous to everyone and only comfortable for a small number of people actually riding on it. If the protected bike path is not extended across the United States Naval Academy Bridge, you'll have a safe, comfortable shared use paths on both sides, and then a dangerous and uncomfortable shoulder to ride on just on the bridge section. So I wanted to bring this up tonight and talk about it because I actually got a hold of the MDOT SHA project manager, and he agreed to come talk to us at our December meeting to give us an update on the project. And I wanted to discuss with you guys if we could put maybe a resolution together saying we also advocate for the city's preferred design, and talk to the project manager about how important it is that this link is filled in.
You want that answer now?
Well, this is my first meeting, so I'm not exactly sure how it goes. But
Why don't you finish your presentation and then we can go back and talk about a resolution?
So that was actually that was it. It was
Oh, okay.
That's my kind of presentation.
yeah, very short and sweet. Yeah.
So Hugh,
Yes.
I'm actually the project lead at the Naval Academy. So
Okay.
we haven't met, but I represent the Naval Academy on this transportation board.
Okay.
So I'm their community planner, and I have been working on the work group with the city and the county and the state on on that segment of roadway. Originally, the bridge was not included in the first. They've done two different feasibilities. Well, first a feasibility study, and then they revised the feasibility study, and then they went to the next step, which was a technical engineering assessment. And so we're up to, like, at one point, we're up to 8 different alternatives about, switching sides of the road from shared use path to in-road bike path, expanding sidewalks. And we still have a number of alternatives that we're actually internally at the Naval Academy are taking to our installation planning board through the process to determine which ones we sort of support at this stage. There's, as I've said before on this, to this board, at least on the portions of the bike path that are within the Naval Academy's property, which is everything from King George Street towards Route 450, and then what's called 435 to Taylor Avenue as you would take a left, and then to the fire station, and then to the base of the Naval Academy Bridge. It is called the Naval Academy Bridge, but it is not owned by the Naval Academy. So that's just, we don't own that bridge. But originally the bridge was not included in the design. I believe the last, and I left my position for 7 months, and now I'm back. So I kind of I'm not sure where we ended up with the component of the project in the design for the bridge. Part of it is it's outside of our, ability to pursue at the Naval Academy. But one of the complications, but everybody agreed that there were some issues, and we want to make sure it's all tied in. One of the issues with that bridge is that it seems very simple to just change the markings. However, because it's concrete and on asphalt, they actually would have to regrade down the bridge and then resurface the entire bridge to change those markings. So there were some complications with that. But I'd be happy to share a little bit more with you offline if you want to think about how to give a presentation at the next board meeting.
Yeah.
The mayor has some new ideas about expanding bike paths on the other side of the Naval Bridge, around as you go. If you took a right there, as you go down near the Severn Inn and up and around, which we all agree is a very dangerous segment of roadway as well. We have a lot of midshipmen that run across the bridge and get out to Greenberry Point. So we're very concerned about that roadway and are trying to influence the county. The superintendent of the Naval Academy issued some letters to the county, or sent a letter to the county executive a year or so ago, trying to get the county's commitment to prioritize that segment of roadway for some safety improvements. So there's lots going on. The mayor is trying to revive some of those discussions recently. So much more to come, but I'd be happy to chat offline, and we can think about how to sort of present to this group everything that's happening and where we are with some of the alternatives and pursuing some of these projects.
Yeah, I love that. Again, I said I had the guy. He agreed. The project manager from MDOT said he would come and give us an update as well in December. I have to follow up with him on that to totally confirm that. But yeah, I'd love to meet up with you and sort of talk about what we could do. My goal would be, I don't want to have this beautiful new trail network that we have, and then there's just this one little part on the bridge where you have to ride on the shoulder of a 50-mile-an-hour road. So that would be my goal. But yeah, I'd love to chat offline and think about.
Yeah, there's always the tail end of the segment, and so unfortunately, on the other side of the project where it only went to Taylor Avenue. It didn't connect from Taylor Avenue down to the Naval Academy. I mean, to the stadium. So we've been advocating. Others have been advocating to add that segment. So each, as you do these projects and you bring in certain landowners and they had certain amount of feasibility study to do certain improvements. There's always, you always have to try and figure out how to keep it going and do those connections. So I appreciate that.
Yep.
Can you share
To
your
be clear, is it not true that you're after a physical separation, not just painted lines?
Yeah, and that's what was, I believe, in the city's current preferred design. Is it's physical, a barrier between the lanes.
Okay.
Can you share your presentation?
Yes, I will email out to everyone after this.
I would just note that some of those preferred alternatives have been advanced. And so there's a more recent engineering feasibility study that was released.
Okay.
And so they moved those at least for the Naval Academy, the ones that you showed there, those were the alternatives we wanted to drill down on further to get more information so that we could consider at the Naval Academy in terms of how it would impact our tenants and a bit of our infrastructure. So we're still considering those. And then we're going to select from, there's 4 new alternatives now that are nuances of those that you showed. So there's still more to be considered on some of those.
Were those 4 just from the perspective of the Naval Academy, and did they include any portion of the bridge or just the section that the Naval Academy has on the sort of the west side of the bridge?
Yeah, it didn't include the bridge.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, I'll get offline with you and I can sort of do a follow-up for our next meeting before we potentially have this guy talk in December to us. That's all.
Is it possible you could share the update, or can you give us an update on that next month before December for what those alternatives look like?
I can share the report.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I can share this. I think it's public information. There is a work group that we haven't met in a while. I think they gave us the last set of alternatives in April. Jacobs Engineering did the design. It analyzes the 4 different alternatives and gives sort of design aspects and limitations and considerations, how many, where we would have to relocate fencing, where we would have to relocate utility poles, those kind of things. So, we needed more information in terms of design, at least just for the segment within the Naval Academy. But it is very tricky. The reason it's taken so long to get to this stage is that a lot of the property within that segment is outleased. So we have a number of tenants and a number of lease agreements. Some of the lease agreements would have to be all renegotiated to expand the right-of-way. And we're also working to rectify a lot of the land records with State Highway for that segment of roadway because there currently is no easement of record. So we've got some legal arrangements with them, but we're trying to figure out, are we going to expand our roadway, their right-of-way to allow for the bike path to be within the right-of-way? Or are we going to have, or the Naval Academy would assume maintenance of the project? So there's a tremendous amount of real estate interactions once we do agree on a alternative.
Okay. Any other comment or questions on the bicycle infrastructure bullet point? Okay, well, thank you, Hugh and Zoe, for that information. So moving on, we have the 2 parking ordinances, and looking at them online, ordinance number 30 shows resting with Transportation Board with us. 31 shows us with the rules and city government committee. But my understanding is that city council is looking for feedback from the transportation board on both. And they're not easy reading. So that being said, Karma, do you want to like take, a minute or two just to kind of dumb down, what it is that these are trying to accomplish and maybe highlight what it is you would like us to accomplish in this board meeting prior to the next city council meeting, just so we can kind of manage expectations?
Sure, I will take a stab at that. One moment. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to make sure. It's like complete silence. One moment. I know that one of them talks about, and I don't know which number, forgive me, I didn't have them pulled up for this discussion, talks about changing the zone for Bloomsbury Square.
That's
I think-
23, 3023.
So it's number 30. So changing the parking zone at Bloomsbury Square, currently they are included in parking zones 1 and 2, which makes up the majority of the historic downtown. And if you know, Bloomsbury Square is actually public housing and it's primarily senior housing. And they want to move that zoning to, I believe it's zone 4, which would move it out of what's going on right now downtown Annapolis, where there is always parking and not having the 2-hour free parking. So they want to change that for Bloomsbury Square. I will say this, in the past 5 years in Bloomsbury Square, we have used grant money to pay the residents parking, residential parking passes for many of those residents because they've reached out saying they weren't able to pay for that fee. Changing this would alleviate some of that need and us finding more grant money to pay for more of those, if that makes sense.
It does. When I read through that ordinance, it referenced the parking zones in like Murray Hill and basically the rest of downtown. So is the intention only to address a Bloomsbury Square change, or I guess I got a little confused when I read that then.
Sorry. So at this point, this particular ordinance is specifically for those 3 blocks that make up Bloomsbury Square.
So the section that talks about reverting like management of hours for parking to the transportation manager for sections that are not Bloomsbury Square, is that like still in draft mode? Like, what should we make of that component?
I do not have the answer to that, but I can certainly find that answer.
Karma, the way I read this is that a principal intent of the proposed changes in the ordinance is to give more latitude to the city manager with respect to administration and to remove some of those details from the code.
That's the next one. That's the next one.
Yeah,
That's 31.
But the Bloomsbury Square thing was quite specific to a particular location.
Well, it also mentioned, which I wanted to ask this question. It mentioned, as Tom said, it mentioned other streets, such as the section of Cathedral between South Street and West Street as changing to District 3. And it also mentioned, which I find interesting, of that there's a WME Waterfront Maritime Eastport District, which is at the end of Shipwright Street. It's not even in Eastport. It's in historic Annapolis. And it mentions that the residents in that little section, which I think is about from house number 10 on down to the water, to Spa Creek, that now they can get a District 2 parking sticker if they want, because some years ago, they actually voted to remove themselves from the parking district. So they have not been in a parking district, which means anybody can park there at any time for whatever, because they're not in a parking district. So my question is, are they going back now into parking district 2? Is that what that is? I mean, it didn't really say it, but yet, because it said now they can get a parking pass for District 2. I mean, why would they get a parking pass if it's not going back into the District 2? I'm not quite sure, unless it allows them to park in other places in District 2, yet for them, they can park anything, do any they want. They can have as many guests as they want. They can do anything they want because they're not in a parking district, unlike the rest of us that are stuck with this system we have here. So that's my question. And that's part of that one. And it was a curiosity. I just didn't understand it. Can we get an answer to that?
I will work on getting an answer to that. I will say though, when you're reading the ordinance, it's only the parts that are marked in red that are changes.
And that was marked in red. No, those, yeah, absolutely. And those are the ones I'm talking about as being marked in red.
Okay.
Carmen, can you clarify? Because there was a lot of strikeout that wasn't in red.
Right. So the strikeout is being taken out, and then any changes, meaning additions, would be printed in red.
Okay, so the strikeout's still a change. It's just
Correct.
okay. Thank you.
So let's do this. Can you, what are you looking for from Transportation Board regarding these two ordinances? Are you looking for edit recommendations? Are you looking for a straight, yes, we approve, no, we don't? What is kind of our mission here?
The council would be looking for whether you give it a favorable approval to go to the council. As far as edits go, those are certainly things that you can suggest, and our Office of Law takes those into account.
Okay.
Yeah, we've done these kinds of things in the past, and I take our charter basically as a fairly broad one. We are asked for our advice on pending legislation, the pending ordinance, and with respect to the overall thing, we approve or disapprove, and with respect to details in the ordinance, are there things that we have problems with or have any other comment? The purpose is to provide the council with advice on how to make this the best possible ordinance. So that's our general charter.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that clarification. So, and the two wards that are most heavily affected by the ordinances are 1 and 2, and Kurt provided his feedback for his ward, which in its simplest form, Kurt, is you're just saying, let's remove the parking district for my ward, and here are a number of reasons why that makes sense. Is that an accurate summation of your feedback?
Yeah, the ordinance, the parking district 5 does not appear to conform to the purpose of the parking district as outlined in the ordinance, and so my recommendation would be just to abolish parking district 5.
Kurt,
I gave you feedback via email, but a question that just occurs to me. What happens on game day if we abolish District 5? Does West Annapolis become overrun with, I don't want to say interlopers, but people wanting to park in West Annapolis in order to avoid parking fees or having to walk to the stadium? So
Yes.
I think you might address that along with your concept about the elementary school and removing parking on one side of the street in order to ease traffic going back and forth. Did you think through that, or have you had
Oh,
conversations?
well, not specifically that particular problem, but generally, the concept is that virtually every resident in West Annapolis has his own private parking. So parking on the street is not a problem in West Annapolis for virtually every resident. If cars park on the street, that doesn't really impact most residents of West Annapolis because they have their own driveways, their own garages, their own private spaces. West Annapolis is quite different from places like downtown Annapolis, the other parking districts where there is a real need for parking control. But West Annapolis has so many private parking spaces that the residents are already well provided for and do not need to depend upon on-street parking. So the purpose of the ordinance doesn't seem to apply to West Annapolis.
Yeah, and it should be noted that on game days, people park all over West Annapolis already. Signs or not. I mean, I see it it doesn't really impact me. I live in West Annapolis, but every game day there's considerable additional traffic and parked cars literally everywhere.
So
A number of residents have pointed out to me that the existence of the parking district is somewhat academic anyway because enforcement is virtually nil.
Yeah.
So you both think that it would not lead to a run on parking in West Annapolis on game day?
Well, I would, another example, for example, would be the Tucker boat ramp and the sticker program for that. I got a boat this year and I got a sticker for the boat ramp. I was the 23rd sticker sold, apparently. And I live in the neighborhood. I'm not far, so I can walk to the Tucker boat ramp. So I take my boat down there, I drop it off. I'm always the only car with a boat ramp sticker. There's usually half a dozen cars on a weekend with trailers that are parked that have put their boats in at Tucker. I'm almost always the only one that has a sticker. It doesn't really bother me. Again, there's plenty of parking. I'm wondering what use my $25 was, but again, it's a question of enforcement and willpower. And I think citizens call when they can't park in front of their house, and that's about it.
Thank you.
And I would say
Yeah,
this, if you
again,
lived
the
on
important thing is that as all citizens in that parking district do have off-street parking. So it seems the whole raison d'etre of the parking district just seems to be missing.
I have a question about the board sort of thinking through these individual wards, considerations or requests
Ron?
with regard to parking. And whether or not we should seek guidance from the homeowners associations for those wards so we can have the pulse. And I'm not disagreeing with anything that Kurt's mentioning, but I think it would be good to know, like, how does that community feel to help inform this? And I guess that's part of representing that ward, is to have a pulse on what that ward feels, as if you're representing a ward on the board. So I would just think, if, I live in Admiral Heights, and, if there was something that was going to impact Admiral Heights, I would want to make sure that at least we've had a chance in Admiral Heights to weigh in on the option. And Karma does a great job at touching point with with her community on that. I just want to make sure that any considerations with regard to individual wards that kind of are working through that process.
Yeah, Karma is connected to both citizens associations very well, and so that conduit exists. What the city council has to do is to balance all advice it receives on ordinances of this kind, from boards and commissions, from the alder persons, and from public testimony. All of those things go into the mix, and they can be independent. The voices can be independent, and they can disagree.
Rhonda, I saw you talking, but I couldn't pick up your audio.
Yeah, you can't hear you.
Okay, I'm gonna read that as a, okay, never mind. All right, A+ for lip reading there, okay. All right, all right, so thank you, Kurt, for your input. So I feel like we have input, you know, with Zoe's point in tow about, you know, a wider HOA. I feel
One
like that-
point,
Yeah.
Tara made some very good suggestions for rewording, and some of them are just excellent, and I agree. I don't agree with every point, but I think I would like to take her suggestions into account before we finalize this.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
there was one in particular, Kurt, where the terminology really had multiple meanings. So I just wanted to diffuse any, you know,
And you did a great job. I really appreciate that.
thanks.
So it sounds like we can further edit, you know, Kurt's feedback for his ward to a document that, you know, would be ready for consideration. And let's just put a pin in that for a
Tom,
moment.
I think we can make an affirmative statement, right? They're migrating management to the city manager from the mayor. I don't know that any of us would object to that. We would think the city manager would have more time to put toward parking issues.
And things would go faster because
Right.
they'd be more immediate.
Right, so
Yeah.
barring any objection from anyone here, we can make an affirmative statement that we believe these generally would move parking enforcement in a positive direction by giving the responsibility to the city manager. You know, unless somebody wants to object, but I think we can make that affirmative statement. And then the other affirmative statement would be that we agree that removing some of the specificity from the language, which is there's a required 8-hour zone on King George and there's a 4-hour zone on blah, 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 that removing that specificity also gives the city manager and any of the companies that are managing the parking enforcement flexibility to alter as more information comes in and they see what's necessary without having to go back to the legislation. So we really are, you're just sort of migrating things from being firmly coded to having flexibility to be responsive. I certainly don't object to any of that. I don't know if anybody else does, but I think we could make an affirmative statement. We believe these are the two positions that are being taken through these ordinances, and we think that they would improve city manager being able to be flexible and respond to parking needs as well as to improve enforcement. So if you
Indeed,
wanna-
both of those points are really important. I agree with them. I think they're both good changes in the ordinance.
Right,
And,
right.
Okay, which, are we talking about both the ordinances or just one?
Well, we're just saying on the one, I'm only addressing the 2 points. One, that it goes from the mayor to the city manager, and that you remove some of the specificity from. the
Yeah, and I
ordinance.
agree with you.
And
I
that
agree.
and I can write a few blurbs and send it around, but I do think we should make an emphatic statement in support of the general tenor. And then we can go into, by the way, besides Kurt's ideas on District 5 and West Annapolis, that we find some holes that we would wonder if you've thought them through, like Shipwright Street.
Yeah, that would be perfect. I think that's a
It-
great approach.
Did anybody have any other positions within the technicalities that like Beth picked up on Shipwright that we should point out to the
Yeah,
framers or the, what did you call it, Karma, the council, that need to be addressed?
Correct, to the council.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
are-
I don't know, Trip, if you read through it and you found any inconsistencies and whether you have a direct path or you'd want to contribute.
Not off the top of my head, but Ms. Dolzall, I understand the concern you were bringing up earlier with respect to Shipwright Street, and I'd be happy to convey that to the folks in my office after the meeting this evening.
Okay, thank you. If you could you can get back to me, get back to us, whichever.
Quick question, and Ms. Ashmore, I think you might have touched on it. I'm reading the city codes portion which govern the transportation board. I believe these recommendations have to be stuck in writing. Is that typically what you guys have done in the past?
Yes,
Okay,
Yes,
good.
it is.
Just double checking. I don't think it needs to be anything particularly lengthy or official, but I believe they do get reduced to a report, if you will.
Yeah.
Yes, and I have a
Mine
question,
is the
Karma,
same.
on timing. This has made it through first reader, is that correct?
That is correct. So it's in
All right.
committees right
So
now.
what is the timing? When must we have a response to the city council in order to have some influence on the outcome?
It won't go back on the city council's agenda for second reader until we get the report from the transportation board
Okay. Well,
and
we
any other
will-
committee that it's been sent to. Yeah.
We will work expeditiously.
Thank you.
Do we know if it's been sent to other committees?
I can tell you 1 second.
Thank you.
I agree with everything that Tara said. My only concern was there was a section in there that basically said, to Tara's point, we're going to reduce the specificity in the ordinance and we're going to give more flexibility to the city manager. But there was a point in there that said if there was a discrepancy between signage and essentially what the website said, the website prevails, which I think creates a really challenging situation for parkers.
absolutely.
And I know it's expensive to go change signs, so I'm not saying let's go change a bunch of signs, because that would probably be not an immaterial amount of money, but I would feel uncomfortable signing off on that.
We
I
could
can
ask,
tell you we're actually in the process of changing signs, especially the times of signs. So once the ordinance passed, then any sign that needed to be changed would definitely be changed, because as we have found with some inconsistencies with signs down on Main Street, it causes a lot of confusion when the signs don't match what the enforcement officers are doing.
Yeah,
Tom, why don't I put in something, we'd seek their assurance that signage inconsistencies are being addressed?
I
That
mean,
we take
I feel
pause with
like
that
it-
language and would like assurance.
I just feel like in my opinion, it shouldn't go into effect until the signs have been changed, because all you're doing is creating a challenge for a resident who follows a sign, which is not in compliance with the ordinance, and then the parking enforcement person is going to follow the ordinance, and they're going to get a ticket, and they're going to have to appeal it and be like, well, the sign said so-and-so. I don't feel like that onus should be on the resident. I feel like, to do it right, the right thing to do would be to change all the signs and then put the ordinance in place, so that, we're not having residents making appeals.
Okay, is everyone good with that, with us adding that we would not want this to be in effect until all signs are changed?
Yes, indeed.
Yes,
Okay, so we've got a few points to make, plus Kurt's.
I actually have another
Yes.
a comment on this, and I read the ordinance quickly. I'm talking about the one that changes from the specificity to giving the city manager the authority to change the parking regulations for these districts. Does anybody have concern, or is maybe I missed it, I didn't make it all the way through on my read, that they can just do that, with carte blanche approval of the city manager to change parking regulations for these districts without, a process or getting feedback or weigh-in from communities or the boards? I just didn't know if there's concern, or if you're assuming that the changes the city manager is going to make are agreeable to all, and it's speeding up the process. But what if the city manager were to make changes that were not palatable to the community, or didn't give the community the way of weighing in through due process?
I advocate for them to have that power.
I think they should have that power, and then if the community doesn't like it, they'll hear about it pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah, the
That
city
doesn't-
council will hear post
Doesn't
haste.
mean it'll fix it.
Right. I just wanted to bring it up that we're
It's-
taking away sort of the due process for public input on parking changes. And we've just seen a lot of parking changes. And I know, that there's been concern about that. So I just want to just make sure that part makes me a little bit uncomfortable. Giving the sole authority to the city manager to make changes universally on parking.
They do report to the council, do they not, and the mayor? So I think there would be some swift feedback.
Does Karma have anything?
I would say this, that where it's changing to from mayor to city manager, it still holds through, like it's being discussed by the city manager. And I can give you an example. Last Christmas, the city manager asked if we could change the downtown meters from 2-hour meters to 3-hour meters, when they're free during the holidays. And that was just a request that he made to the council, and we had a resolution that said yes. So I don't believe the city manager has the authority to just, double the pricing or whatnot. It's within the parameters of the fee schedule, the fine schedule, and it's this particular ordinance is taking away some of the detail information as far as the time and whatnot, but it doesn't take away the ability for, public comments and major changes to take place without public comment. If that makes sense. So I think that it's giving the city manager the ability to make those decisions, but within the parameters of the current code.
I have a process question. If we have a document and we all review it, are we allowed to ratify it and suggest it be sent via email? Or do we have the authority to vote via email if there's something we wanted to move forward quickly rather than wait for the next meeting? I should look that up, but I don't know.
Look at the bylaws. I think we can do that. We can.
Answer that. We can do that. And I only know that because I'm also on my neighborhood board here. And that was one of our issues last week. And I looked up our board rules for this one to find out if we could, so that I could give firsthand knowledge. So the answer is yes.
Thanks.
Great.
Yes, they changed that a while ago, a few years ago, because it became such a sticking point. And so you can vote by email.
Okay. So, I feel like then we have feedback that we can put together into a kind of a concise document and then send it around the horn and vote on it. Does anybody have anything else they want to contribute on that topic?
Kurt, if I write up these ditties, I'll send them to you. Will you have the capacity to put it with your District 5 recommendation?
Yeah.
Or
I
do you wanna do
I
it
would love to have. Somebody needs to draft the response for the transportation board. I've drafted a portion of that response, but somebody needs to do all of the rest of it. I don't know whether that's you or Beth. Can you settle it now?
I'm happy to do it. I would just need you to give me back your most recent version of your recommendation.
Yeah, I can do that when I get back in actually about 6 days.
Okay, I'll work on the rest in the meantime, and I can always send that around with a little insert District 5 here.
It's fine with me.
Wonderful. Is that okay, Beth?
Yep, fine with me.
You have some material that you can supply to Tara?
Well, she's
Not
got the
really,
comment
I
on
mean-
Shipwright Street. Yeah,
But-
you've got the comment on Shipwright Street, which I can incorporate.
Well, yes, yeah, and I I had a few comments on Bloomsbury Square, which actually were the same thing that Karma said, that it relieves them of all the restrictions that are in districts 1 and 2, allows them to have far more ability for people to visit, to people, you know, to come and visit them and whatever. And but actually, in the scheme of things, it doesn't really make any difference whether Bloomsbury Square is in District 1 or 2 or you know 4 or wherever it is. I did have something else on that one though, 30. It also says State Circle residents will now be able to get parking tickets, permits that allow them to park between 8:30 p.m. and 10 a.m. on State Circle. What happens if they come home at 5 o'clock? And, you know, obviously they can park on other streets, but I just don't understand why all of a sudden State Circle is going to be allowed to park between 8:30 at night and 10 a.m. in the morning. I mean, if they come home at, you know, 5:30, 6 o'clock and they park on, say, East Street, they're not going to come back, I assume, and get their car at 8:30 and park it on State Circle. So I'm not quite.
But I think that said any resident of Ward 1 could now park on State Circle during those hours.
I don't think so.
I thought I saw
But
that. I thought I saw
maybe.
Anyone with a District 1 parking sticker could park there as well, which basically says instead of State Circle being empty all the time, it can actually become utilized, right? So if there is Thursday night Christmas shopping and, you know, parking space in front of my house is gone and I come home late, which has happened, I've learned, do not use the car on Thursday nights during that Christmas shopping thing. I can use State Circle, and it's sort of a lovely relief resource for resident 1.
Okay, it says here, residents of an existing building on State Circle are eligible for a special residential parking permit in District 1. Unless otherwise prohibited, residents with a special residential parking District 1 permit may park on State Circle. Now that's confusing, because first it says residents in buildings existing on State Circle. Then you're right. It says it leads you to believe that any resident. And so, and it's one sentence after another. I mean, it's not like they're in separate sections or whatever. They're in the same section. So if Karma is still with us, if she could answer that question, whether it relates to any District 1 parking person, or do they have to live on State Circle? Because it says residents of an existing building on State Circle are eligible.
That's an answer I'll have to get back to you.
That's conflicting.
I'm sponsor to move Bloomsbury Square. And a lot of the rest of it is really what Ellie Tierney refers to as cleanup on aisle 5. We are going through our code and cleaning up code.
Sure, and that's logical. I mean, you know, but it's just that all of a sudden, it's two conflicting statements.
Right. I've marked it. I'm going to double check with our law departments, and Tripp can verify as well. I'm just going to go back with Cynthia Reuter and make sure that I understand what she was trying to do there, because I'm not sure that I do.
Yeah, it's confusing to me. Okay.
Noted as well, Beth. I'll take a look with Cynthia too sometime soon.
Okay.
Get that ship right squared away.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Not to insert myself here again, but I took a quick look at what I think are the operative rules of procedure. It looks like there were last approved November 2010. Is that the latest rules of procedure for this board?
I don't even think there was a transportation board in 2010.
Okay.
Well, I
it's-
think those
There was
rules
a
are the last
parking-
formal ones.
Yeah,
The-
there
the
was
re-
a parking committee. Maybe it was finally, that was when it was formed, because there was just a parking committee. There wasn't a transportation board. And then
Got
they
it.
formed the transportation board. So maybe it was in 2010. I don't know.
I was curious as to see whether or not you all can vote via email, but unfortunately, if these are the latest rules of procedure, there's a specific provision which says electronic or email voting shall not be permitted. I'll take a look to see if I can dig up any more recent rules, being that these are about 13 years old.
Is there a generic rule which applies to all boards and commissions which authorizes electronic voting?
There may be, Kurt, but I'm inclined to think if this board has a specific set of rules, then that one would override the more general one. But again, I'll take a look tomorrow to see if I
We
can.
need to update them if that's a problem.
I tend to
Or
agree.
we just do are we allowed to have an ad hoc meeting to vote? If we
We
have
can, we can hold special meetings.
yeah, okay.
Sorry, not to throw a wrench in anything. I was just curious, to be honest with you.
And I'm going to go back to answer the question. Somebody else asked where else this has been referred to. It's also been referred to the Rules and City Government Committee and to the Transportation Committee. So it was referred to 3 bodies of people to evaluate and discuss: the Transportation Boards, Transportation Committee, and Rules and City Government.
And the council will consider all of these inputs and make a decision.
Exactly. Yep. So as soon as a report is submitted to council, it'll show up in our Legistar as I don't know if you guys can see on Legistar. There's an attachment. There's first reader. There's the summary, and there's the staff report, and then there would be the Transportation Board report as a 4th, and then Rules and City Government as a 5th, and then Transportation Committee, which we won't take it up until November because we canceled our meeting for this month because at the time we did not have any legislation on our plates. So we canceled last week's meeting. We will either give it a favorable or unfavorable recommendation to the council. So that's what the committee does after discussion.
Okay, so Carmen, just so I understand that if all 3 of those entities have to weigh in before the city council will take any action, is it accurate to say that we could have our next regular transportation board meeting, vote on something formally, and it would not be holding you guys up?
I'm going to give a hesitant yes. It wouldn't be holding us up, although I'm assuming that it'll be taken up by Rules and City Government this week at their monthly meeting.
Mhm.
And then the next Transportation Committee meeting will be November 10th, I believe it is,
Which is before us.
which is before you.
Right, but that's okay, right? We just need to be in before the next city council meeting. Is that accurate?
That's accurate, but we will be wondering what you have to say about it at our committee meeting.
Okay. All right, so perhaps it makes sense to have an ad hoc meeting in about 2 weeks or so to do a quick vote and move on. Does that
Right.
sound accurate? Okay. Okay. Any other feedback or comments, input on this, the 2 ordinance under legislation, bullet point? Take that bell as a sign that we're good to move on. Okay, so that brings us into new business, and Hugh, you have a bullet point for pedestrian crosswalk.
Yeah, I had one more very quick presentation I wanted to talk about. Let me share my screen real quick. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
So I want to talk about a proposed crosswalk at Duke of Gloucester and Compromise Street. So the problem is on Compromise Street, there's no crosswalk for over half a mile. The two crosswalks that are there, the one that's right at Ego Alley, and then the other one at 6th Street and Severn Avenue. So there's no place to safely cross for anyone, but especially people who are in wheelchairs or pushing strollers, and people who cross at St. Mary's Street or Duke of Gloucester anyways, and they do that without the increased visibility of the crosswalk. The other problem at this intersection is that there's a curb cut currently placed in a dangerous spot. Instead of being placed behind a stop sign, the curb cut is 15 feet in front of the stop sign and the stop line where cars stop. So people are walking out into the street before the spot where cars are told to stop. This has caused people to walk in between the cars lined up to turn left or right onto Compromise Street. The other problem with it is it's sort of like a slip lane design. So drivers turning right are usually only looking left for oncoming traffic, and they don't look right for pedestrians crossing at that intersection. So this is what the intersection looks like today. There's no crosswalk there, but there is a curb cut. And I'm proposing something like this. I'm not a traffic engineer, so this is not exactly what I don't know how the exact designs, but I think that something like this would be a much safer solution than what's there currently today. So add two crosswalks at the intersection of Compromise and Duke of Gloucester, add a curb extension at the intersection, and the two turning lanes at the bottom of Duke of Gloucester, drivers can still turn left or right like they do today. This increased visibility for pedestrians crossing, decreased distance between crosswalks and Compromise Street from 2,600 feet to 1,300 feet, increased pedestrian visibility with a 90-degree turn versus the current slip lane design that's there today. Shorter distance for pedestrians to have to cross with the curb extension. Pedestrians now walking behind the stop sign versus 15 feet in front of it. And to give a quick background on this, in 2013, the city hired Sabre Wang and Associates to conduct an in-depth traffic study on this intersection. The city decided to move forward with the recommendations. The city added a curb cut in front of Annapolis Yacht Club on Compromise Street. They even put in signage. The signage in that picture to the right is currently in front of Pip Moyer, and that exact sign was installed on Compromise Street until at the time the Historic Preservation Committee chair had DPW remove the signs because they had a solar panel on them, which I don't think that HPC actually has the right to make decisions on traffic safety projects. But the city then decided not to do anything with the project, and nothing's been done for 10 years. So what I was hoping was we could have a discussion about this and maybe bring it back up to the city council that the project that they were seconds away from actually completing 10 years ago, putting it back in so that there is a crosswalk in Compromise Street and you don't have to walk half a mile if you have a wheelchair or a stroller.
I will.
Sounds like the city needs to get some 18th century solar panels.
Okay. I want to jump in here a little bit. It was my husband who got them to do the crosswalk and to put up the signs and everything, along with the general manager of AYC, because an awful lot of AYC people cross there. And we do, and because we walk down Duke of Gloucester and cross it, and he saw it as a thing, and he got him to do it. One of the people who lives either on that corner or the next house complained that their view was blocked by the solar panel, and the city jumped in and took it all down after they put it up.
That's what I was told as well.
Huh? You were told that, yeah, but that's not in your presentation though.
Yeah.
So, you know, and so it's like, and AYC just, said, threw up his hands along with my husband and said, forget it. I mean, if they can't figure out how important that crosswalk is, I'm done with it, but it is dangerous. We cross there all the time, and it is dangerous because there's nothing there. I don't understand why the solar panel is such a problem, but
And if it is a problem, then come up with another solution. Don't just not do anything for 10
I
years.
agree. And I don't know why, since it was okayed and actually installed and all, why it just couldn't be reconstituted, not go through the whole thing all over again, like you're saying, you know, just reconstitute it and figure out what is acceptable and do it. Because one of these days there's going to be a terrible catastrophe there, because it really, especially at night, it's just not good. So
again, this is my first meeting, so I'm not exactly sure what the best next steps are. I don't know if it's like we write a resolution, we all vote on it and send it to the city council that, hey, this is something that the transportation board finds important and we want to move forward on it. And if that's the case, I can write something and put it together and send it out to everyone. But I'm sort of open to hearing what people's thoughts are and what we could possibly do for next steps.
Yeah, I think the correct mode of communication is a resolution. You draft a resolution stating what it is that you think the city ought to do, and then the city, either the administration or the council, probably the administration, would execute it.
Is everyone okay with me putting something together for everyone to look at?
absolutely.
Does anyone have any problems at all with the project?
Oops, the lady we can't hear.
We can.
We can't
You are
hear you.
muted, Rhonda.
No, she isn't. She's
Oh.
unmuted herself.
There's no sound, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Is Mr. Fulton still on? Oh, did we get her? Can we
No,
hear her?
that was Zoe. I had a
Oh,
comment.
that was Zoe. I was wondering whether there are templates or preferred formats for resolutions, as well as responses when we're asked to comment on ordinances.
We have made several past resolutions. I don't think there's an official template, but I can circulate some things if you would find that useful.
Thank you.
I have a question for Kwaku, if he's still on, about whether or not the city has a, transportation improvement plan where they go through a process each year of identifying projects and priorities. I mean, I'm not opposed to going the resolution route, but I think that there may already be sort of, at least in some cities and some communities, there's this, and that when I go back to my bike path comments, we were putting in comments and recommendations to the county executive on prioritizing a certain segment of roadway for safety improvements. So Kwaku, does the city sort of open up for public comment and recommendation for projects that we see as priorities, so we wouldn't need to go the resolution route?
We do have one, however, that is managed by Public Works. And normally it is at the time when the city is putting in its fiscal year a transportation improvement program. So as part of public comments, that goes before council as part of the proposed budget for people to comment on the CIP projects. So that should happen before the budget is introduced to council. Anything in between, I am not aware of a process where a project can actually be added to the CIP and unless there is an amendment to the TIP. For instance, the mayor's ferry project, when it comes on board, the CIP was amended to include it in. So if there is a project that needs to be included in the TIP, especially when it is financially constrained or the funding is available, we can, through the transportation board or a member of council, actually propose an amendment to the approved TIP. Otherwise, you may want to wait till when the TIP process kicks off. Typically, my understanding is that Public Works actually handles that process, and it reaches out to all city departments that would like to actually add the project to the CIP. And there are forms that we actually complete. If you're interested, I can get you one and take a look at that. But so far as adding the project to the TIP, typically is before the budget process and goes before council, and then that opens up the public to make comment on that.
Okay, I think that's something for us to keep in mind in the future if we have areas where we want to recommend some safety improvements going through that process to at least inform the capital improvement plan or the transportation improvement plan. But in the interim, since we're not within that cycle, maybe it makes sense to make a recommendation or amendment.
Yeah, and Zoe, I believe it's a Bureau of Engineering that will handle those kind of road projects. Sam Bryce, I believe, is the manager for that. So you may want to reach out to him, and he has a wealth of knowledge because he's been with the city for so many years. He will be able to share his experiences and what has tried before, what they have tried before, what was proposed, and what couldn't be implemented because of other issues. So I will strongly encourage the board to reach out to Bureau of Engineering within Public Works. You can go through the public Works director to reach out to them, but they handle that process.
Yeah.
And also, is it Mr. Hayes? I saw your crosswalk. Again, you may want to check with Sam Bryce of Bureau of Engineering. He'll be able to give you or share some life experiences on that so that we can move forward with that.
Okay, yeah, I've unfortunately been talking to the city for over 2 years about this crosswalk. And it's pretty much one of the reasons I've joined the board is I don't know what else to do to get this crosswalk in. I think I've actually talked to Sam in the past, but I can talk to him again. Just trying to look at a different avenue of getting this done.
Well, I didn't know that you have already had a discussion with him,
Yeah.
so that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This seems like the impossible crosswalk to get in for some reason.
Well, if that is the case, the board could be one avenue to actually look through to make recommendations to the Transportation Committee that they can actually add it to the CIP during the budget process. That's another way to look at it.
Okay, I think that's probably I'll put a sort of resolution together that maybe we can all look at and recommend that we want to do it, and then our goal would be getting in the CIP when that time comes up.
Yeah. Okay. Any other question for me? No.
Thank you,
Okay.
Kwaku.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so unless there is other feedback on the pedestrian crosswalk bullet point, can move on to just activity and reports by members. We have pretty big turnout here, so how about we just use the raise hand feature if you have something that you want to contribute that might be faster than going around the horn. Yeah, what do you got, Beth?
I just want to say that I really feel like the chair and vice chair need to look at our membership and how the membership attends the meetings, because there is a strict rule. You're supposed to attend. If you're out, miss 3 meetings a year, you're off the board. And we have members that just don't show up. And it needs to be, if you want to be on the board, you need to come to the meetings. And I think that the chair and the vice chair need to look at that and deal with it.
Beth, for your information, I have been keeping track of this. And when members do miss 3 consecutive meetings, in accordance with the ordinance that controls this, I do make a report to the mayor and city council. They have not acted on those reports so far, but we could be more emphatic in recommendations if there seems to be a real problem.
Yeah, obviously you're doing it. And so the other would be to get the city council to actually do something that they're supposed to do.
So is that the process, Kurt? You need to ask them to make a change because they make.
There's an ordinance that simply requires that all chairmen report to the city when members have missed more than 3 consecutive meetings. And I do make that report. And nothing has happened so far.
Okay, I'm just wondering, so the board itself could not vote out a member or say?
No.
Okay, thank you.
But the board could ask the city council to remove a member. I know that you send the attendance to the city council, But the city council is not about just going and removing members at every whim. But I do know there's at least one other board currently in the city that had submitted a request through Hillary to have a board member who had consistently missed meetings and not been participating removed from that board. And so that is actually taking place at this time.
So you're saying, Karma, that just giving the attendance is one thing, but when a board feels that a member isn't partaking and doing what they're supposed to be doing, that you actually have to ask that that member be removed.
Yes. And it
Okay.
would chair reaching out to Hillary Raftovich, who is
Yeah.
manager of boards and commissions. She
Yeah.
would then submit that information to the council and to the mayor so that that could be taken care of.
Okay.
I know it seems kind of backwards, but in all honesty, I know that Hillary works really hard to try to fill board positions. It's not really the council is not trying to not fill board positions, but if there's a board member that's not living up to the expectations of that board, then pointing it out is a much simpler and faster way of getting that board member removed.
That seems logical. That was my only comment.
Okay. Anybody else have something they want to contribute at this section where we're doing activity reports?
I have nothing specific, but I want to thank you, Tom, for running the meeting. You did a fine job.
No, thanks so much. Maybe once a year, just kind of keep in practice. All right. Well, on that note, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Before you do,
Seconded.
Oh,
Yep.
this is very likely my last meeting.
Who
Because
is
by this
this?
time next month, I'll probably be homeless. I've been fighting with the housing authority since my mother died, and depending on what happens in court, I won't be a resident of Ward 6.
My goodness.
I don't know
I'm
where I'll
sorry
be
to
a
hear your
resident of.
troubles, Charles.
So, Beth, if that was to me, I may not be here next month. I don't know where I'm going to be next month.
Oh, boy. Well, we wish you the best of luck.
yeah, and Charles, I don't think it was. There is a particular member that is,
No, it was
No.
definitely not you, Charles.
No.
Charles, have you been in contact with Erin Lee in our Office of Community Services?
I've talked to Hillary twice,
You talked with Hillary?
and I have not been able to get a hold of whoever from the city.
should we adjourn and then they can keep talking on this, but
Yep.
it's no longer recorded? Can we do that since this is a,
Personal issue?
yeah,
That's a good idea.
Yes.
that everyone would support continuing the discussion to help Charles, but I motion to adjourn?
Seconded.
I
Adjourned. we
Aye.
Board.
So moved.